Hi, I'm Jenna Benge and I'm here at the Kerouac House and representing the Kerouac Project of Orlando. And we have our latest resident with us today, Sarah Viren. She's going to start with a reading and then I'll ask her a few questions. So over to you, Sarah.
Thanks. Okay. The futon was cheaply made. The faux brass knobs accenting its armrests were loose, and its lacquered wood finish had begun to chip away. Its metal ribcage pushed through a thin, white futon mattress, kneading my back while I slept at night. In the morning, I would wake to the slightest stench of mildew from the cushioning by my head. Lying there, I wondered if he, too, had been bothered by the smell. Beside the futon, I kept his alarm clock. It was made of white plastic and had a black face framing red blinking numbers. In the kitchen were his table and chairs. They were a pale wood, likely a maple. I assumed he must have used them every once in a while, maybe just as I would, alone in the morning, pouring myself cereal, staring at the wall molding. The TV, I am certain he used, flipping through channels until he found his favorite, the stock show. That was what was on the morning the killing took place, at least if you rely on court testimony. In my apartment, it sat above his VCR on a metal rack from Bed Bath & Beyond that my mother had bought me when she came to visit and worried that I had nothing of my own in my new place. She had also bought me a Target standing lamp, but it was his white lamp that I plugged in near the front door. When I got home at night after work and flipped the switch, it was his light that exposed my home to me. Robert Durst is not a murderer, legally speaking. He's a billion-dollar real estate heir who in 2000 went missing from his New York apartment. He arrived in Galveston sometime later, disguised, I'll bet poorly, as a mute woman named Dorothy Siner. Rather than talk, they say, he would write down messages on a piece of paper. He rented a studio from a tall German man named Klaus and lived quietly on the island for almost a year. Then one September afternoon in 2001, a father and son were fishing in Galveston Bay when they happened upon the dismembered torso of a man in a garbage bag. In those same waters, police later found 5 black plastic bags containing a 22 caliber automatic pistol, the plastic cover for a bow saw, and 2 human arms and legs wrapped in old copies of the Galveston County Daily News. The newspaper had Durst's address on the mailing label. 9 days later, Durst was arrested for the murder of his 61-year-old neighbor, Morris Black. Police claim Durst had been living in Galveston, Texas, disguised as a woman while hiding out from the officers in California who wanted to question him about another murder, the shooting of his best friend, Susan Berman, on Christmas Eve of 2000. Before she was killed, Berman was about to talk to police regarding the mysterious disappearance of Durst's wife, Kathy, 23 years earlier. But Durst cannot be called a murderer. In fact, my calling his futon a murderer's futon is quite possibly slander, at least if we are speaking legally. Still, that is what I called it, my murderer's futon. I moved to Galveston from Florida in 2003, 3 years after Durst had arrived. Galveston is an island south of Houston that was once nicknamed the Wall Street of the South, though these days it's better known as one of 3 things: a cheap beach resort, the name of a Glenn Campbell song, or the site of one of the deadliest natural disasters in United States history. On a September day in 1900, a Category 4 hurricane rose from the ocean and smothered 30 miles of roads, houses, and shops that were once Galveston Island. When the hurricane's waves retreated, it left close to 8,000 dead bodies and flat lands where mansions once held stay. The island never again regained its charm, and that feeling of misplaced regality, a hint of death, was still palpable when I moved there. A friend of mine, a poet, came to visit me once, and she said she could taste ghosts in the air. Sensible people said nonsensical things like that all the time in Galveston. I moved there for a job. After graduating from college, I decided that all I really wanted was to be a newspaper reporter. My first try was with a weekly paper on a small island in Florida, a place where everyone drove golf carts, and the news often meant covering dog shows and performances by retired whiff and poof singers. When an editor at the Galveston County Daily News, a friend of a photographer I knew in Florida, called with a job offer at his paper, I said yes without hesitation. quit my island job, sold all my things, and moved alone to start a new life in Galveston. I found my apartment through a classified ad listed by a tall German man named Klaus. It was a one-bedroom shotgun that hung from the side of a renovated Victorian house a few blocks from the historic downtown. 2 blocks away was a bed and breakfast run by a former Playboy bunny. 10 blocks south of that, you hit the seawall, and beyond that, the beach. In the mornings, prostitutes walked the ocean line, offering what one Houston weekly called a blowjob on the way to work. In the evenings, it was Segways and packs of fat families. The rest of the island was filled with empty cotton sheds and port piers, strip malls and t-shirt shops, renovated lofts, new swanky restaurants, and too many abandoned beach houses. When I met Klaus, what I noticed first was how perfectly square his jaw was and how tightly knotted the red handkerchief was around his head. He always wore that handkerchief, and that, together with his tool belt, gave him the look of a pirate moonlighting as a carpenter, which was not altogether inappropriate. The other thing Galveston was known for was as a hideout in the early 1800s for a French pirate named Jean Lafitte. Klaus was close to 50 and had owned a chain of beauty restaurants in Houston before selling them and investing that money in Galveston real estate, which everyone said was about to boom. In 2000, he rented one of his apartments to a deaf woman named Dorothy Siner. It was several miles from the one he would rent to me 3 years later. But after the arrest, after police confiscated all of Robert Durst's belongings, after they ripped up the floorboards in his rented apartment and drilled through the walls looking for evidence, they gave Durst's confiscated furniture to Klaus, and Klaus moved it into an extra garage a few blocks from the apartment I decided to rent from him. "Don't worry, he didn't live in your apartment," Klaus assured me in his thick German accent after he told me the story. We were standing in the doorway of that storage garage, our eyes adjusting to the darkness. After I'd signed the lease, I mentioned that I had no furniture. Klaus said he could give me some for free, as long as I didn't mind who its previous owner was. I said I didn't. He nodded and led me over to that garage a few blocks away. Behind us, the autumn sun played with a pair of live oaks, checkering the grass with shadows. I could make out the shape of a pale kitchen table in the corner of the garage. It supported a TV, a VCR, and a Time Warner cable box. In the darkness, the contours of the futon slowly came into focus. It sat upright, almost wrapped, facing the stacked electronics. "Are you sure he won't mind?" I asked Klaus, suddenly hesitant. Durst's murder trial was underway in the county courthouse a few blocks away from where we were standing. He had been charged with first-degree murder, but was claiming self-defense. I imagined Durst on the witness stand, and it seemed wrong suddenly to take his belongings without his permission. Later, people who learned about my furniture would tell me that taking Durst's things was wrong for other reasons. "How could you?" they would ask, mouths agape. "He was a murderer." But I have never been sentimental or superstitious. More than disgusted or scared by the furniture, I was curious. But at the same time, I didn't want to feel like I was stealing from someone, murderer or not. "He's going to have a lot of bigger things to worry about if he ever gets out," Klaus assured me. "Besides, he owes me a lot of money, Robert Durst." Then, looking over at the futon, he added, "You think you can relax on that, huh?" He cracked a slight smile. Without answering, I walked over and picked up one end, and together we loaded the futon into Klaus's baby blue Suburban. In the 3 trips between the garage and my apartment, we moved the remainder of Robert Durst's belongings into my new home.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's the part of the essay that you applied with. Is that right?
Yes. I thought it'd be fun to read.
Ah, yes, it was. So tell me, how did you hear about the Kerouac Project?
I heard about it from a previous resident, Chloe Honum, who was a poet. Was here a couple years ago. So she sent out, actually about this time last year, sent out a message on Facebook saying, "Hey, if anyone wants to apply, you should apply to this. It's a great residency." And so I wrote her and I said I was interested and just asked her about the residency, and she encouraged me, and so that's why I applied. I didn't know about it, even though I grew up in Florida, so.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So what have you been doing while you've been here?
Writing.
Very good. We always like to hear that.
I have been I've been finishing essays for this essay collection that I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
And this essay that I just read is the title essay for the collection. So I've written a couple entirely new essays, which is kind of incredible, just to be able to have the space and time to do that. And then I revised a couple others. So yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
And what have you been surprised or enjoyed about the residency here?
I think a lot of people say this, but how great the community is pretty surprising. Because I think even if you're told, oh, the community's great, you don't really realize it until you get here. So I've been surprised. I think I mentioned to someone that it sort of felt like doing my MFA again, because it felt like that community of writers that you have when you do your MFA. So that's been surprising. The other thing that's been surprising is that Orlando's not like Tampa, where I grew up. I thought this would just be a replica of Tampa. And I've even had to explain to people back in Tampa, I say, yeah, Orlando's different. Like there's neighborhoods that you can walk around. And they're like, oh wow, that's amazing. So
How cool.
yeah, so that has been surprising too, because we tend to think Florida's all the same, but it's not. You know, there's different parts of Florida. So yeah, and then I guess I've also towards the end been surprised how comfortable I've gotten in this house. You know, when you first arrive, I felt a little bit like I was in somebody else's house. You know, I had a hard time sort of claiming it as my own. And I even felt like maybe Jack's ghost was around or something, even though I don't believe in ghosts. But
But still.
His picture is everywhere. But then, yeah, in this past month, I was like, oh, I totally just think of this as my house. You know, I feel very comfortable here. So that's been nice.
Very cool. And what kind of advice would you have for another resident coming in?
I would say take advantage of all the opportunities to get involved in the community. I really liked doing readings, and then also the radio shows. I did John King's radio show, and then also Ryan Rivas and Jared Sylvia, and those were super fun. I would say, I would definitely recommend taking breaks from writing and going and walking around. I have so enjoyed the lakes. Like I go for runs and also walks like around these lakes, and there's so many beautiful wading birds and everything. What else would I say? Take advantage of the whole house, I guess, and I think it's nice to use the house. It was nice that we had that extra reading here. I mean, it's nice that you can do events at the house. So I also think that's a nice thing to take advantage of.
And you did a workshop as well.
On a workshop, that was really fun.
Good.
Yeah, so if you have the opportunity, do a workshop. Yeah, you get to know a different sort of group of people, and I think that's pretty exciting. You realize, I mean, for my farewell reading, there was these people that came by because it was on their bucket list. I guess their Orlando Weekly put together this
100 things to do in Orlando before you die.
And the Kerouac House is there. And it is pretty neat to be able to help, you know, be part of somebody seeing something that they really want to see, or, you know, that especially people that are really into Kerouac's history. So I think that's pretty exciting.
It is. So what are you up to next? Where are you off to?
I am returning to West Texas, which is where I live now. I am actually in a PhD program, so I have to finish the PhD.
Good.
Otherwise, it won't have been a lot of work for nothing. So I have 1 year left. So when I go back, I actually have to do my qualifying exams. But then I hope this summer to keep working on this project. I have one more. The essay that I didn't finish that I'm still working on is about Jack Kerouac's daughter. I've been writing an essay about Jack Kerouac's daughter, Jan, and I need to do some more research for that, but I'm hoping to finish it this summer, and that would be one of the final essays in the project, and so then start sending it out to hopefully become a real book rather than a project.
Well, we hope so too, and we hope when it is published that you come back here and do a book party here for us.
Oh, I'd love to.
That would be awesome.
That would be very fun.
Well, thank you so much for being our resident. You've been a lovely resident and a really good mix in the community, and we wish you all the best and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.